LUMIX just announced the brand new S1 Mark II, which is the best video camera that LUMIX has made to date. And in this video, we're gonna be deep diving into everything that you're gonna need to know about this camera and some potential deal breakers towards the end. And a quick disclaimer, LUMIX did send me out to Austin, Texas for the launch of the LUMIX S1 Mark II, but they're not sponsoring this video, nor do they get to see this video before I upload it. So these are my own truthful thoughts. Starting off the price of this camera, this is coming in at $3,199, which is $100 cheaper than the LUMIX S1R Mark II. Talking about that camera, let's talk about the physical design. This is the exact same camera build chassis as the S1R Mark II, with the front record button, the front function button, the front/rear tally lights. You have the tilt-free screen. You also have that front shutter close option if you want to protect your shutter. And then you also have the CF Express Type B and your SD card slot. The only major difference between this camera and the S1R Mark II is going to be that sensor. This is a 24 megapixel stack sensor, meaning you're going to be getting much faster readout speeds and better video specs in this body. Talking about video specs, there is actually 30 pages that are gonna be on screen right now, flashing really quickly. So if you wanna see them, I suggest slowing down the video and pausing wherever you wanna see the video specs on the screen, because there is a ton of different video specs that this camera has. But I do want to mention a couple specs that I think is worth mentioning. The first one is going to be the open gate settings. So not only do you have the 6K open gate, 24 and 30 frames a second, we finally have it, guys. 5.1K, 48 and 60 frames a second in 10-bit open gate. This is going to be an overstacked image on this camera where it's downsampling from 6K, I believe, to give you that open gate in a higher frames per second resolution. So we're gonna be getting 48 and 60 frames a second, full frame, open gate, 3x2, 5.1K. Finally, it's finally here, open gate, 60 frames a second in a LUMIX camera. Now, that also means that we do get full frame up to 96 frames a second, actually. Full frame, no crop, up to 96 frames a second. You also can have 4K 48 and 4K 60 frames a second, all with phase detect autofocus in 48, 60, and 96 frames a second. There is also going to be 4K 120 frames and 1080 240 frames a second, but it is worth noting that both of these modes, even though that they're really great, you are going to be using contrast-based autofocus, and there is a 1.17x times crop to that image. Now, one thing that I do think it's worth mentioning, when you are running HDMI out to a monitor, you do lose some subject tracking options on a few of these different settings. Mainly and basically only anything that is higher than 48 frames a second in 5K or higher. So if you're shooting 5.1K or you're shooting 6K, and you're shooting in 48 or 60 frames a second, you are gonna be losing that subject tracking, again, only when you have your HDMI plugged in. But if you are shooting in 4K, 48, 60, or even 96 frames a second with HDMI, you still get that subject tracking, which is huge, that you're getting a super slow-mo option with phase detect autofocus and subject tracking with this camera. And it's worth mentioning that you can record any of these video specs with an SSD. There's no longer a requirement for a CF Express Type B card. You can use your SSDs with this camera and record any setting that this camera has into an SSD, which is pretty cool. Now, and a quick tip for navigating all these video specs and settings, go to the display button when you are on the record menu, and then you can customize from there what type of codecs, what resolutions, what frames per second, if it has proxies, if it has hybrid log, gamma, etc. You can do this with any LUMIX camera. Or once you find the video specs that you specifically like, just hit the Q button, and then that will save it to my record quality list. And then I personally recommend having that set up to a function button on your camera, so you can just quickly press a button and then choose between the video modes that you typically use all the time, instead of searching for this all the time, trying to find that specific video mode that you want to use. Just set up a my record quality list and you'll be golden. Shifting gears, let's talk about dynamic range. You do get 14 plus stops of dynamic range in this camera, but if you do turn dynamic range boost mode, which is only able to be accessed in 24 and 30 frames a second, and it decreases the rolling shutter performance, then you're gonna be able to get 15 stops of dynamic range. When you would really wanna use this is going to be in interview settings and shooting between a window or shooting out a window, and you wanna get as much dynamic range as possible. And I have been pretty impressed with the results from this camera. Now, the dual native ISO in Vlog is going to be 640 and 5000 in both dynamic range boost mode. On and off is going to be the exact same. Nextly, let's talk about color. This is probably the cleanest Vlog color profile I have ever seen. I was really impressed by the S1R Mark II, but when I put this up to that camera with the color test between these two cameras, I was shocked that the S1 II was even more color accurate than the S1R Mark II. The S1R Mark II definitely shifted a little bit more magenta. Meanwhile, this camera shifted a little bit more towards the green side and those neutral tones. But it doesn't stop there. LUMIX also announced that the ARRI Log C3 is going to be coming to all the flagship full frame LUMIX cameras. Now, this was originally introduced to the GH7, which a lot of creators here on the platform said that was nearly the perfect camera if it wasn't Micro Four Third. Now that it's finally coming to the flagship full frame cameras, it's no longer a gimmick, and it's seriously gonna be probably a game changer for some people, giving some people the best color workflow and one of the best color profiles out there in the industry, being able to work with the ARRI color science directly inside a LUMIX camera that's a fraction of the price. Completely shifting gears, let's talk about the autofocus. Since the introduction of face detect autofocus in LUMIX cameras, they keep getting better with time. But one thing they specifically added with this model, and it's coming to the S1R Mark II as well, is the new subject tracking for humans, urban sports, which is basically capturing humans when they're in different or unique positions. Yeah. One thing that I love is all the control that you have with your subject tracking, but I do wish that LUMIX will end up adding some type of auto subject detection, because with the amount of different modes from human, animal, plane, train, car, motorcycle, and then all the sub modes in those modes as well, it's becoming just a little bit overwhelming. I do like having the control, so I'm not saying get rid of the control, but when you're just out shooting for fun, it would be nice to have some auto subject detection mode in this camera itself. I do want to touch point on the video support modes that the LUMIX is offering. Since LUMIX is more of an underdog company, they're putting a lot more jam-packed professional video features that filmmakers or aspiring cinematographers want in these cameras. Things like shutter angle, false color, multiple frame markers, which is coming soon, waveforms, vector scopes. You also are getting USB streaming finally with this camera. You have the proxy / Frame.io camera to cloud integration as well, where you can upload proxies in real time to the cloud, and you get 32-bit float audio internal on your video files via the XLR2 unit. One more video support feature that LUMIX added to this camera is the copy settings. You can now copy from an SD card, CF Express Type B card, or an SSD and transfer all your video files to one storage device to another. Sorry for the quick interruption. If you've been enjoying this video so far and you want to see more videos about LUMIX cameras and how to master your LUMIX camera, you should definitely consider subscribing. Anyways, I'll get back to the video. They released also the 24-60 f2.8 lens. It's a 77mm thread. It's 4.5 inches in height versus the 6 inches the 24-70 f2.8 LUMIX lenses. When you fully extend that out, that's only 5.5 inches tall. You have a custom function button, and you can also customize this focus ring to white balance, aperture, ISO, and different things like that. There's gonna be a whole video on this lens as well coming to this channel very soon. Okay, with all of that said, what are the cons? There has to be some, right? Right? Now, my biggest and only concern with this camera, if I'm being 100% honest, was overheating. And I've tested it not once, not twice, but 6 different tests, and the results were interesting. Quick recap, did I experience overheating? Yes. but I learned a lot about media cards and different things like that, and some of the best settings to mitigate and remove all overheating issues altogether with the S1 Mark II. So let's talk about that. First off, the CF Express Type B card that I was using wasn't a good card. It was an Angel Birds, which is a huge no-no. So whatever CF Express Type B card really matters when you're using this camera and you don't want to have any overheating performance. Secondly is going to be your fan settings. So there's 5 different fan settings, but only 2 are really important to know. That's Auto 1 and Auto 2. By default, your camera is going to be going in Auto 2, which basically disables the fan right off the bat and only turns it on when needed. Then there is Auto 1, which has the fan set to normal mode, which is relatively pretty quiet, and then turns it on fast when it is needed to be cooling down the camera. So it's be more of a preventative than reactionary type of cooling systems. So here is their test results that you need to know. So my fan settings was set to Auto 2, and then my thermal management was set to high to try to push this camera as far as possible. It did overheat at 45 minutes and 27 seconds, but I do know that Dustin Armstrong, who's also having a video drop today, did the exact same test in a different temperature setting with the CF Express Type B card instead of an SD card and did not experience overheating with those exact same settings. The next 2 tests that are really important is going to be when I turned the fan setting to Auto 1 and the thermal management to high was the same. Now I had no HDMI and no 32-bit flow in the camera recording any audio, and the camera basically died before even it overheated. There was no overheating symbol whatsoever. It didn't even pop up. The camera ended up dying, the battery died, and the SD card filled up before it even was able to overheat whatsoever, which is a really good sign. Now, this last and final test I did, which I wanted to push this camera more to the test, I did the 6K open gate, 24 frames a second. I ended up having the fan set to Auto 1. Kicker here is I had HDMI running out to the camera, so I was running a video signal, and I had the XLR2 unit plugged into this camera, recording 32-bit flow audio directly onto the file itself. And the results, well, the camera didn't overheat whatsoever. The symbol didn't even pop up. Again, the footage and the camera ended up running out of battery juice before it could even overheat. So with all that to say, I was fairly really impressed with this camera and the overheating capability. So if you are in those conditions that you require this camera to perform really well in harder conditions, I personally recommend setting the fan settings to either Auto 1 or even fast, and you will never experience overheating, I believe, on this camera. Those are my own test results. It's definitely gonna vary from region to region, but this is the one worry I had with this camera, and I will have to say, in my own personal opinion, I don't think I will have that worry with this camera anymore. Now, before diving into my final thoughts, I do want to invite you guys to the official LUMIX Discord, or the LUMIX Creators Club that I created, where you can talk to me, Sean, and different people about this camera, answer questions. We are, if you're watching this video when it comes out, are going to be doing a Ask Me Anything with a couple other creators who have this camera hands-on. So if you're interested in joining that live talk, there is going to be a link in the description to join the Discord, and the call will be later tonight. My final thoughts. The LUMIX S1 Mark II is definitely the best video hybrid camera LUMIX has ever made, but in my own personal opinion, it's probably one of the best on the market. With the video specs, features, and the price point that this camera is coming at, it's going to be extremely competitive and also really tough to beat. Anyways, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, or if you have any questions about the LUMIX S1 Mark II, definitely leave them down below. And if you are interested in seeing me compare the LUMIX S1 Mark II versus the LUMIX S1R Mark II, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Until next one, guys, peace.